It's a theological world after all, after all, after all, after all.
Hello, welcome once again to It's a Theological World After All. We're living in a moment where everyone is worried about artificial intelligence, what it's doing to truth, to knowledge, to discourse. And one of the more provocative claims out there right now is that systems like ChatGPT, these language learning models, aren't just occasionally wrong, but that they are in a very precise philosophical sense producing what Harry Frankfurt called bullshit. But what's fascinating, and what we're going to explore today, is the problem may not start with the machine at all, but in fact it seems to start with us. In a recent paper, ChatGPT is bullshit, partly because people are bullshitters. The argument is not just that these systems are designed to generate convincing text without regard for truth, but that they are trained on human language and human beings themselves. And it turns out they are themselves deeply incentivized to produce truth-sensitive speech. So the question becomes, are we looking at a technological problem or a human one? I want to explore both the philosophical and the philosophical lines a bit further with you. Our guest today is Jimmy Alfonso Licon. He is the author of the article that we just mentioned, ChatGPT is bullshit, partly because people are bullshitters. And so I want to explore this a bit with Jimmy today. It's a fascinating article. In fact, I said in passing to Jimmy, I think months ago, he's writing all the things that I want to write. And this is one of the pieces that I wanted to write. So he's written it. So we'll get into the philosophical issues, but I also want to spread out a little bit as we move along in the conversation and talk a little bit about broader implications about culture, and maybe even dabble a little bit in theology. So let's begin. Jimmy, thanks for coming on. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Good to be here.
Yeah, good. So, Professor, I didn't mention your credentials, but you are a professor at Arizona State University, right?
Go Sun Devils.
Sun Devils, right. That's right. And you've been working quite a bit the last few years on broadly social philosophy, political philosophy, and a whole host of other things, right?
Yeah, I would consider myself more of a philosopher of cooperation. So
philosopher, okay.
Yeah, when I was a little kid, I sort of wondered why people cooperated. Like, why doesn't everyone just bum rush the king and kill him?
Yeah.
Those sorts of questions, right? Why do people pay their taxes? Why do we care what other people think of us? So yeah, I ended up as a philosopher of cooperation. So.
Very good. Yeah, I hate paying my taxes. So, well, let's jump in. Getting the argument clear. I want to talk about this paper, and if we could just walk through it a bit slowly, walk through the argument. There's been some discussion around these LLMs, language learning models, in particular ChatGPT, and there's a whole host of wild and exotic questions that are being raised, like is ChatGPT conscious itself, or could it be conscious, or what kind of intelligence does it have, depending on how you define intelligence. But you're asking a different kind of question here. So tell us, let's walk through the core claim of the paper in your own words.
Well, actually, my paper is a companion to a paper that came out about a year before. It's called ChatGPT is Bullshit. It's got three authors, Michael Towson Hicks, James Humphreys, and Joe Slater. And it appeared in Ethics and Information Technology. So they're sort of making the original claim that I then built upon. So their claim is ChatGPT is a predictive AI. So what it does is it predicts when you ask it a question or you prompt it with something, one of the things it's broadly doing is it's predicting the likely continuation of the prompt. So if I ask a question, for example, what is someone likely to say in response as an answer in a given context? So what they do is they'll continue the text that looks like what a human would say in that context. Of course, a lot is being done by the word context. So one of the reasons ChatGPT will screw things up is because it doesn't get the context right. It lacks crucial information that you and I would pick up on, like a right time, right place type of deal, or it's the wrong time to say something. But they lack context often, but they do their best to continue the text in a way that a human would in that context. But you'll notice that what a human is likely to say in a given context may or may not be true. So if we're talking about something that people are typically very sensitive about, and ChatGPT and Claude and these other large language models are trained on text and trained to predict what the next likely text would be in that context, you might very well get falsity because it's such a sensitive topic. Religion and politics, sex and money. These are all topics that humans, we lie about, we bullshit about, and we do other things. So their argument is basically that they think ChatGPT at a minimum produces what they call soft bullshit. This is the stuff that it's text that's produced without any sensitivity to the truth. So if I'm a politician and I'm trying to please people and get votes, I don't really care about the long term. I care about the short term. I might say lots of plausible sounding things about the long term in order to look good to my constituents. Do I know whether they're true or false? No idea. Do I care? Also, no idea. I just don't. So if you think of the politician sort of as our paradigm, that is sort of the large language model. Now it's a helpful politician. It tries to do its best to continue what the text should be in that context. But it's looking for plausibility. It's not looking for truth or falsity. They also make a more advanced argument that we're not going to really get into, but it's sort of important to think about. They also distinguish what they call hard bullshit. This is based on comments that Harry Frankfurt made in his original essay, which I'd recommend everybody read. It's like 8,000 words. It's one of those like things you can get at the airport and read it in a flight type of books.
It's an excellent book. I would love to write a book like that someday. Yeah. I mean, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a pamphlet, but it punches above its weight, academically speaking, definitely. So in certain parts, Frankfurt will talk as if a bullshitter is someone who's merely insensitive to the truth. They don't care if what they're saying is a lie or the truth. They just want to convince their audience. If the truth will do that, fine. And if falsity will do that, then that's just as much. That's just as useful. But he also makes comments in other places where you might think he's talking about hard bullshit. So this is sort of where you're intending to deceive your audience about how sincere and reliable you are. So it's not quite lying. So you're not going out of your way to say things that are false. You're saying things that are true and false, but you're doing so under the guise of trying to seem as if you're accurate and sincere and reliable. So they think, given the way chatbots interact with their users, their first-person tone, the way they try and be very compelling, they try to sound confident, that they've been designed to produce hard bullshit too. So they give soft bullshit in the sense that they're insensitive to the truth. But they also produce hard bullshit in the sense that they're trying to give the sense that they're sincere and accurate and reliable, when really they're anything but. So that's sort of the beginning paper. So that was the paper I read, and I thought, well, that is really cool. And I thought, the architecture of large language models definitely lends itself to bullshit, because they're designed for plausibility. That's by definition, that's bullshit. But then I thought, yeah, but they're also trained on human data. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. They're trained on the internet, and the internet is riddled with bullshit.
It is.
So the idea was born that part of the reason ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, and these other large language models bullshit is because they've been trained on just oodles of human language and writing, and that is just riddled with bullshit. So anyway, that's kind of where the paper came from, and how we can get into that argument if you want to, but that's sort of the initial piece of this puzzle.
Good. Yeah, let me step back and define bullshit a little bit. You've already defined it. You start off with a quote from Harry Frankfurt on bullshit. He says, quote, someone who lies and someone who tells the truth are playing an opposite side, so to speak, in the same game. The bullshitter ignores these demands altogether. He does not reject the authority of the truth, as the liar does, and oppose himself to it. He pays no attention to it at all. By virtue of this, bullshit is a greater enemy of the truth than lies are. So, yeah, Frankfurt talks about, it's a great quote. Frankfurt talks a lot about different types of bullshit. So maybe we could spell out some of those and then get into just as background to what you already said. Because he talks a lot about different types in his book. He talks about, for example,
I'm blanking on that I'm blanking on that. So.
Yeah, okay. He talks about bullfighting as a kind of bullshitting. So sometimes people will aggressively, in a kind of their machismo way, kind of bring out their kind of bravado as a kind of, not as a fist fight, but as a way of having a kind of bullfight, like two guys who go at it after each other. There's a kind of bullfighting, a kind of tug and war between the two of them when they're messing with each other or joking around. He talks about different contexts for bullshit, like, you know, when you get together with the guys, say at the bar or at the let's say at the cigar shop or something. When you're having a conversation, half the time when you're having a conversation, you don't care about the truth, right? When I get together with my guys, half the time we don't care about the truth. We just want to have a good time and cut up and forget about the daily stressors of life, right? And so we jab at one another. Sometimes we talk about the news, whether it's true or not. I mean, half of the mainstream news, I think, is probably not true anymore. So, but we might talk about it, and it's and we're not really concerned with the truth at all. We're bullshitting. I mean, it's part of the fun. The concern really isn't truth at all. So your idea is that, and the idea that you're building upon from the other paper is that ChatGPT and other language learning models like Gemini are trained off of that. So they're trained on data, but they're also trained on humans who are bullshitters as well. And the internet itself is full of that. I mean, we have it's completely full of bullshit. So I'm a little trepidatious to put this out because I was thinking about my audience, which is actually quite small at the moment, but a lot of evangelicals listen to this. So I wonder how they're going to respond to this this topic. But let's keep going. So you give two explanations, one from design and one from training data. Which do you think is doing the heavier lifting?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I don't know. I went back and forth. I thought about this. So I read it in your in the questions you sent me. Trying to think. I think you can argue both. So if you, for example, were to install like a fact checker in ChatGPT, you're still going to get a lot of bullshit. For the simple reason that bullshitters aren't allergic to the truth. They'll use it constantly insofar as it's valuable and persuasive. But on the other hand, if you were to get rid of the training data, if you were to train large language models on, for example, the internet as done by angels, let's say, very truthful, sincere angels, it's still going to be a bullshitter because all it's doing is predicting what angels will say
Yes.
after a prompt. So if the angels prompt the large language model, it's trained on angel data, right?
Right.
But it's going to give what the angel is likely to say in that context next. But that's truth and even if it happens to all be true, it's still truth insensitive. So really and I mean, we're getting into this probably later on, but like there's lots of things you can't verify or fact check. Like, if it were, I mean, we're talking spiritual matters, political matters, moral matters. You can give arguments, you can place bets, you can maybe personally know something. Maybe you have a divine revelation. But this idea of like fact checking across, multiple agents, there's lots of areas where you just can't do that. So I don't know. I've gone back and forth, but I thought among the questions you sent, I thought that was probably the best one.
Yeah.
Which is much more fundamental, I thought. I could see it going either way. But you'd fix up the data, and if you kept the architecture the same, you're still going to get bullshit. And if you fix up the architecture, but you kept the data the same, you're still going to get bullshit.
Right.
So they really are doing work at different levels. So I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you.
So I was just thinking about this the other day, and I wanted to use this example. Let me see here. Jimmy, I was thinking about this the other day. I was playing with Gemini, and I was asking what at one level is an objective question. And I did end up getting 2 or 3 different responses from Gemini, which I found interesting. They weren't necessarily mutually exclusive answers, but these were questions. So, I'm an Anglican. So in the Anglican world, I think about, this question of holy orders and what we mean by holy orders. Totally foreign to the discussion, I know, but just follow me. I was asking it, what are the conditions for holy orders, and who in the Anglican world actually has holy orders, right? And then it gave me an answer, and it gave me certain groups, and it said these groups are probably considered legitimate or valid holy orders based on, two broad sets of criterion for how you determine holy orders. And then I asked it a more framed question. I said, well, look, I'm a part of this group. I've always had this concern about these other 2 Anglican groups, ones that are more prominent, like the ACNA, Anglican Church of North America. And you could think about the G3 groups, like the Continuum Episcopals from the 70s who broke off from the Episcopal Communion. And I've had my concerns. And so I listed the concerns, and I said, now I'm a part of this group. And it seems to me that they have more legitimate orders, or you might say more valid orders. So what do you think about this? And it actually ended up agreeing with me, and it said, yeah, there's a really plausible line you can make here for this. And you're right, Joshua. These guys have these other problems, right? They're not in communion with the See of Canterbury, for one example. They're one of the groups doesn't seem to have a clear line of apostolic succession to a legitimate bishop, and so they're kind of doing their own independent thing, arguably. So anyway, it just gave me 2 different answers, and one was much more subjective, in line with my inclinations, and so I thought that was an interesting response that it gave me. 2 kind of contrastive answers that it gave me. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I use it a lot for, I use Claude and ChatGPT a lot for my work. I treat it like a TA, so I run things by it and kind of bounce things off of it. But I usually have more than one version open. So I'll run it by ChatGPT and then see what it says, and then you run it by Claude and sort of compare answers. And sometimes I'll run it through my the version that keeps the memory. So there's like ChatGPT and Claude both have memory features. Well, they'll sort of remember you, and then you can also use temporary, turn off the memory. So I'll sometimes just turn it off and be like, okay, is it kissing my butt because it knows me and it knows what I like?
Right.
So I'll go to the temporary one. And so I find you have to go through like multiple interactions with different versions of the large language model in order to avoid the sycophants. It's very sycophantic in addition to being a bullshitter.
Sycophantic, yes.
Yes.
Well, maybe that could be your next article.
I think it's been pretty well done, actually, in the literature. But yeah,
Is it?
I mean, it hadn't been written, definitely. But I was thinking about it. I found my notes, and it's something that I'd written down about the question you asked. What is more fundamental in the bullshitting nature of these large language models? Is it the training data or is it the architecture? I think it's the training data. And I wrote down because it's easier to change the architecture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you imagine rewriting the internet so that it was truthful? I mean, the amount of reviews, the dating sites, the websites, just the Reddit posts that you would have to rewrite in order to make the internet reliable and truthful. I mean, that would be a gargantuan task that would require the labor of like half the world's population for probably like a decade. I mean, there's just so much out there.
Right.
It's easier to change the architecture in the sense that you have these, companies that control them, and there's a lot of bottlenecks that you can change. Whereas the training data, the bullshit is everywhere. Right. So good luck. And I mean, hell, people's diaries. I mean, we bullshit ourselves as much as we bullshit anybody else.
That's right. We're biased to kind of build up ourselves. Yeah.
And I think somewhat understandably, I think we'll get into that a little bit, but I actually don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think life is very, very hard. And sometimes facing the truth about yourself is difficult.
Yeah. Right.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's continue with this, and we'll come back to that question about training data and the one about human design. And I want to come back to that and tease some things out from that. But let me ask you a different question. Your argument assumes that humans are broadly incentivized toward truth indifferent speech. Do you see that as a social phenomenon or something deeper about human nature?
I actually don't think that's right. I think most people aren't incentivized to bullshit. There's pretty good literature on this by some guys named Dan Sperber and Hugo Mercier, I think is how you pronounce their names.
Okay.
They do philosophy, they do some moral psychology, but they've done a lot of work on what they call epistemic vigilance. That it's actually harder. I mean, this is one of the reasons why bullshitting ability is a very good marker of IQ, because bullshitting people is actually really hard. You have to be pretty good at it. This is why people that tend to run companies and get elected to office, run academic institutions, etc., are pretty good at bullshitting, but they're also pretty high IQ. So there's a selection effect. I mean, for one simple reason, that humans rely on each other for testimony. Most of what I know, most of what you know, most of what we take the word of others. Could be science, could be religion, could be history, written testimony, verbal testimony. So you could be bamboozled pretty easily unless you're vigilant. There's definitely an opportunity there to take advantage of somebody if you wanted to. So humans, I don't know if it's by evolution. I don't know if it's by design. It's probably some of both. Who knows? But humans are actually quite vigilant. So I think people will bullshit if the incentives are right. If you're less likely to see a person again, if you are less likely to care about them and their opinion, total strangers, for example. If there is a huge payout to bullshitting, but not to being honest. These are cases where people are much more likely to bullshit. But I think in a lot of interactions, people are actually quite vigilant. So I think the question isn't about like intention or nature or opportunity. I think it's incentives. The question always comes down to me is, what are the incentives to tell the truth, to be honest, to be reliable?
Yeah.
It could be reputation, it could be money, it could be embarrassment, it could be a number of things. But I mean, people do bullshit. But in other words, I don't want to paint a grim picture. Actually, I'm pretty optimistic about human communication. I think it's pretty hard to put one over on people. which is why I don't think it's any coincidence that bullshitting ability tracks IQ at all.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's a hard to fake signal of intelligence, meaning if you're not very intelligent, it's pretty hard to effectively bullshit people.
Mhm.
Reminds me of the Abraham Lincoln? You can fool some of the people all the time and all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time.
Right.
People will catch you. And I mean, you'll probably find this too. You're listening to someone, it could be a student, a family member, a friend, someone on the street, and they're telling you a story. Maybe they're giving you an excuse for why they didn't do something. And you may not say anything, but you may think to yourself, that doesn't smell like there's something off about that story. It's implausible, or it conflicts with something I know in the background,
Right.
or it's not the sort of thing I would do. Right. So we do this a lot and we're pretty good at it. But yeah, so I mean, I am much more optimistic than maybe that article, than maybe that article would convey, right? So.
Yeah. Okay. So, you're more optimistic about most human beings. Most human beings are inclined toward telling the truth, and it takes a really advanced kind of intelligent person to be a good bullshitter. So most of our leaders are bullshitters. That's really I'm not sure if that's consoling or encouraging, but
well, it's not bullshit. It's honest.
Yeah, that's right. So do you think this applies to our own self-perception, our management of our own self-perception, or is because you talk a lot about reputation, signaling, cooperation, markets. A lot of communication in these contexts is not arguably aimed at the truth, but rather about management of our own self-perception or our own identity in society.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is. I had to review a lot of this literature for a book I just finished called "Better Not to Know: Why Knowing Less is Sometimes Best." And the point that I came back to over and over again, thinking about reputations, our moral sense, like what do we think of ourselves morally, how we identify, motivating ourselves to do things that are hard or improbable, managing our relationships with other people, all of these things require some degree of bullshit. I think there's a special kind of person that can face the truth, like a Stoic or Nietzsche's Übermensch, sort of stare into the truth with ice in their veins. But I just don't think that's most of us. So whether it is bullshitting ourselves about how beautiful our wives are or how smart our husbands are, maybe he's not as charming as you think he is,
right?
Or how important that project is that I have to get out of bed to go do, or odds of success at starting a company. Most companies fail. People are crazy to start them, and yet they do. So the question is why? Well, because in some ways, at least at the margins, at the edges, truth can be very disincentivizing. I mean, can you imagine? You're starting a company. It's very unlikely to succeed. And basically the only way it's going to, if it has any chance at all, it's got to require moxie and like a kind of a blind faith in your success.
Mm-hmm.
But you have like a C-3PO character from Star Wars who just follows you around and tells you what the odds of success are and just how dismal they are. And are you crazy? And why are you doing this? And that makes no sense. It would be very disheartening and very disincentivizing. No one wants to deal with that. And even if it's true, in that case, I'm not after truth. I'm after the success of my business. Or I want my marriage to succeed.
Right.
C-3PO is like, oh, your wife's not that beautiful. Would you that's not helping right now. Or he's not as funny as he thinks he is. Your husband's not that funny. But there's a little bit at the margins where people will do this. They'll lie to themselves a little bit. Now, not huge lies, not big lies, but they'll bullshit a little bit. And sometimes they're lies, and sometimes they're the truth, depending on the situation. But or how good of a person we are. Are we as good as we think? I mean, I have my doubt.
Typically not, right? Yeah.
But it might be we're even worse without that view, right? It might be that without bullshitting ourselves about how morally good we are, we would be an even worse person. So there is this moral payoff to this epistemic irrationality. So in this context, my insensitivity to the truth may actually be somewhat conducive to doing the right thing. Maybe another, and like at the margins, it pushes me a little bit more in that direction of doing the right thing. And I want to add that I'm not necessarily saying epistemic irrationality is bad. I'm just saying that and what I mean by that is just ignoring the truth. But what I am saying is there's definite value and benefit to it that is often lost on philosophers who are sometimes laser focused, because we're kind of, philosophers are sort of a weird bunch, laser focused on the truth and, holding our beliefs in proportion to the evidence and making sure that everything we believe is rational. And those things are nice, and there's definitely value to those things. But it really misunderstands that we are social and cooperative creatures too, and that those needs are going to cut in to epistemic rationality from time to time. We're not all C3PO, thank God.
Right. Yeah. So I remember Catherine Rogers in her book on Revelation. I think she makes she criticizes this form of communication as being a kind of deficient form of communication, if I recall correctly. And she makes a connection to Schopenhauer on dishonesty and how bullshit is a kind of dishonesty, and it undermines the whole point, the whole telos of communication, if I remember her argument correctly. She would be one of those. Are you familiar with Catherine Rogers?
I'm not. She sounds interesting. And I love Schopenhauer, so that's kind of cool. But
okay. Well, anyway, yeah. She makes this argument in the context of her book on Revelation as a communal. So she's in the literature on divine revelation. She wrote a book on defending a kind of more communal kind of epistemology of revelation. And so she motivates an argument, you might say, for a traditioned kind of appropriation or reception of revelation. So in that context, she's criticizing Frankfurt's bullshit as a form of communication that kind of defies the whole kind of teleology of communication itself.
Yeah, I think I'd push back a little bit and say I think overall she's right. Like if people bullshit too much, the whole thing comes crashing down. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, a little bit of bullshit helps the medicine go down, right?
Yeah,
so like,
that's right.
I'm not like there's these tons of studies, just to give you an example, that find if you're in a relatively healthy marriage, being a little bit in the dark about just a little bit about your spouse's less attractive qualities can really facilitate a successful marriage. Now, what I think that argument that she gives ignores is what economists would call thinking at the margins. Like how much more honesty or how much less honesty would be good for your marriage, as in this example.
Yeah.
So she's right that there's absolute value to honesty. Like if you were to just be in the dark completely about your spouse, that wouldn't work. But perfect honesty doesn't really work either. I think you need a little bit. I think it'd be the same with communication. People partly communicate whether they want to acknowledge it or not. This is one of those self-deception, we're not going to talk about it kind of deals. But part of what's going into communicating and helping is reputational. If you get rid of that, you're going to undercut some of the motivations and incentives that people have to even can communicate in the first place, let alone communicate reliably. But I think overall she's probably right. Like you can't have too many liars or bullshitters in the mix, and you can't do it too much, or the whole thing falls apart. But at the margins, at the edges, at the outskirts, it has some real value in facilitating. I would argue without bullshit, you're not getting communication either. So if you expect everyone to be perfectly honest about everything, they're going to say a lot less than they otherwise would. And they're going to say a lot less valuable things than they otherwise would too.
That's good. Yeah.
This is like people who think they're going to get rid of gossip. And I laugh. I mean, 'cause I've been in recovery groups before where people will talk about, or church, where people will talk about how horrible gossip is. And I think, yeah, gossip can definitely be horrible. It can definitely be bad. But where do you think reputations come from? Like, if there's a bully in your midst, how do you warn other people about the bully without talking behind their back? This is sort of hard to do. Or someone who's dishonest, right? Don't loan so and so money; they're not going to pay you back. I don't really want to say that in front of so and so though, because I don't really want to get into it with them. But he burned me, didn't pay me back. He's burned other people, so just be warned. Well, that's a form of gossip, and it's definitely a form of reputation management. But it's a way of us living together without too much tension and stress. But I worry if you get rid of it entirely, you're just not going to have communication.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, you might say, well, maybe we could be more honest with these people and just tell them what we really think, and it's really uncomfortable, and that's okay.
Yeah, you could try that. I don't think it's going to work, but yeah, I mean, you could do it. And probably some odd, unusual couples do. I mean, I'm talking in aggregate here, and I'm talking about groups of people. So you're going to find folks that don't fit that mold, sure. But this goes back to life is very short. You have demands on your attention and time.
Yes.
Things like honesty can hurt. They can cause turmoil. And I mean, like, if you're going to tell someone that they're leaving the house and they look ridiculous, let's say, right? There are nicer and meaner ways of doing it. Right?
That's true.
Like, if you're like, yeah, you look like Bozo the Clown. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know, right? Maybe that's one way of saying it. Another way to say it is, you maybe don't look you don't maybe look as good as you could look. Would be about maybe sort of a nicer way of putting it. Now, and the differences between those two answers, did I bullshit? Second one, I kind of did, because the truth is they look like Bozo the Clown.
You don't look as well. Would that be bullshit or just downplaying the varied? Yeah,
I mean, I'm less sensitive to the truth in my statement than I otherwise would be. Yeah,
or at least, yeah. Okay, is that maybe that's an instance of bullshit? I was thinking. I mean, there's sometimes where you leave out certain facts. Is that always bullshit though? I mean, you might leave out certain facts to protect, so that you don't lay it on so thick. Like if you're critiquing someone or you're saying something that's not overly positive. Yeah, I guess, is that bullshit? I mean, maybe it is. I thought it was just being, yes, of course, both could be in some context socially sensitive. So that you can save the person's kind of self-perception a bit. But, I mean, I guess we can have degrees of truth-telling as well as bullshitting. I mean, if I were to say to my wife, that dress is not the most becoming on you. It just doesn't quite fit as well on you as other dresses do or have. Well, there's truth in that, right? There could be truth in that.
Yeah, there's truth in bullshit too, right?
There is. There can be.
Containing truth isn't antithetical to something being bullshit. My point is simply that if someone asks you, I want you to tell me what you really think, and then you don't completely.
Yeah.
That's arguably bullshit at the margins. It's understandable. I mean, do you really want to pile on? You look ridiculous. I mean, is that really productive? It's not. And that's why I think we wisely sometimes don't give when you sort of swear an oath, you watch these TV shows, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Are you doing that? No, you're not. You're not telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth. You're fudging. And understandably, because I think it would be very unwise to not fudge in that context. And it causes, and you can get the desired outcome which is, conveying to the person that maybe they don't look their best without stepping on their toes. So I don't know. I think one way to make sense of this is just to say there's different levels of bullshit. There's more malicious forms. There's, sort of, we do this with lies, right? You have lies, you have white lies, sort of nice social lies that you tell. Is the truth really productive here? Is it wholesome? Is it good? Is it really doing any good work here? Or is it just hurting feelings? Like, do I really need to say that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So what about this is, I guess this is the concern. Is there a danger in your account toward a kind of epistemic pessimism where persuasion of some sort overtakes truth? Bullshit becomes more important in some cases than truth-telling.
Becomes? You mean it hasn't happened yet? Oh, you were... No, I'm kidding.
No,
yeah, so I had two thoughts on that question, which I thought was interesting. So one is no, I'm actually quite the epistemic optimist, because I think if you bullshit too much, you're gonna pay for it eventually. Like, people catch on, hurts your reputation. It really doesn't work. It works for a time. It can work some places, but generally speaking, but I actually don't. Persuasion taking the place of truth is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I think in a lot of ways that's really all we have. So if you think about what philosophers do we engage in truth-telling, or do we exchange? What we do is we exchange plausible arguments, and we're convinced of certain views. Like, if you're a moral realist, if you're a theist, if you are a dualist about the mind-body problem,
right?
Is that exchanging a truth, or what are you doing? You're going up against materialists, idealists, and others. Yeah. You're smashing plausible arguments against each other and seeing what survives.
Right.
You're appealing to various intuitions. You're running thought experiments. You're arguing that your view or their view better fits the background of what we know about the world. There's all these ways in which you're comparing plausible arguments.
Yes.
I'm not sure philosophers can do much else. I mean, this is probably true in art, like art criticisms or culture, politics. Do we always know what the best policy is for taxes? No. But what you can do is you can appeal to, like, economic models, historical data. Like, last time we raised taxes to 90%, X, Y, and Z happened. Or you can appeal to moral, maybe in spiritual considerations, like people deserve to keep what they've earned. These are plausible. So I think as a proxy for truth, plausibility is pretty good. I mean, this really goes back fundamentally. The question or this whole conversation we're having is really Plato's cave. I mean, it's appearance versus reality, and plausibility is a form of appearance. It looks like this view is true. It looks like this view is false, and we use plausibility as a proxy for truth. I don't think we access truth directly, at least not in a way that is like in many cases. I think sometimes we know the truth. Like, there's plenty of things we know, but like when we're talking about philosophical, spiritual, moral, political questions, so I don't necessarily think that plausibility taking over. It depends on the context, but I think in a lot of contexts, there's really nothing better than plausibility. That's the best we've got. At least as a group. Yeah. So, like, maybe you've seen God. I know I've had some religious experiences before, but there are plenty of people who believe in God because they've heard very plausible arguments for God's existence. Like, that's the extent of their sort of epistemic grip on God is very good arguments. Yeah. But it's always possible those are false. So, sure. I mean, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's all plausibility all the way down. Like, I'm not Richard Rorty. Yeah. Like, we don't have access to the truth. All we have is plausibility. But I think in many cases we do. Like, in the more controversial, harder to pin down areas of human life that aren't so black and white, where you don't. I mean, this is goes back to the fact checking thing I was talking about earlier. Like, it's hard to fact check philosophy if you're a chatbot, because do you go with the consensus? Like most philosophers are atheists. Does that make atheism true?
Right.
That seems kind of goofy. I mean, no.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So I think in a lot of cases, plausibility is the best we got.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. It does rub against my intuitions a bit. So I want to dwell here maybe a little bit and see if we can explore this. Yeah, I mean, I wonder, you brought up Plato's cave. I mean, Plato, certainly probably he didn't have a conception of bullshit, but he did have a perception of he did talk about perception and experience in change and the like, and of course he saw that as being a shadow of something else, something greater, namely truth, or whatever being is that's outside the cave that we can hopefully access through our sort of dialectical process. So Winston Churchill says something like this, something along these lines: truth is incontrovertible, malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it, but in the end, there it is. You're familiar with this Thomas Mann quote? A harmful truth is better than a useful lie. You remember that?
Well, yeah, I've heard it before. I've always wondered what he means better in what sense. There's different kinds of better, right?
C.S. Lewis talks about this idea about interpersonal relationships with your spouse. I mean, he says, there is maybe this is an instance of bullshit. I didn't think of it along these lines, so I'm actually kind of toying with this a little bit. I mean, he would say that in some cases, like, you might not believe something, but you might have like a second order belief that it is true, or that it could be true of you. So by way of practice, you begin. You could think of this as telling yourself a lie, but I mean, I think in his case, he's seeing this as an instance of truth, actually. So if I, or if a spouse, like a husband, doesn't desire his wife, he would say, well, or he doesn't find her attractive, then at some level, Lewis would prescribe some advice and say that you need to act toward her in ways that she is attractive, right? Or she is pretty or beautiful. Even if you've lost your attraction to her, you should act as if she is. And then eventually you'll begin to believe it at some point. But is that an instance? I guess you would say that that's an instance of bullshit. But it serves the purpose of truth, right? Or maybe it serves the purpose of virtue.
Yeah, I don't know if it would necessarily be bullshit. It could be, definitely. But I could see bullshit in the service of truth. It might be that you have to bullshit someone for, that old saying, people don't care what you know until they know you care. Getting people to care about you and then dropping a truth bomb on them. Yes. That might be conducive to truth in the long run. But yeah, that'd be kind of my way of thinking, that bullshit's much more prevalent than we think. There's different kinds of it, and a lot of it is necessary for our social lives.
Huh. Yeah.
And part of it, I think, is temperament. So, your wife has had a long day, just tired, discouraged. The last thing she wants to hear is all the ways in which she has fallen short. Right? I mean, This is just a human thing, right? It's all too human. And she's coming home to you So you could be that person for her, or you could be like, because the world's a harsh place, and especially as you get older, people aren't quite as flattering as they used to be when you were, like in my case, I used to be, believe it or not, at one time I was young and handsome, but not anymore. The world's not quite as flattering as it used to be. And it's nice to hear that once in a while from my wife. I don't know if she's telling me the truth or not. Sometimes I don't really care. It's just nice to hear.
It's nice to hear.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to be told they're handsome? I mean, it's, it's got to be plausible sounding.
I don't know if I really want her to tell me if it's not true. I mean, look, underneath the surface, let's say that, I mean, if the spouse is, if my wife is going to say, I'm attracted to you, if that's really not true, I don't think I want her to tell me that. I want her to tell me the truth. You're not into me. You don't like me. Okay.
Josh, you're butt ugly. You're butt ugly.
Tell me. Maybe I'll fix it, or I'll try, or if this is the reality of the situation, maybe, there's something wrong here. There's something off here in our relationship. No, tell me the truth. Right?
Yeah. I think this is actually, I think you're getting to something that a lot of philosophers ignore, which is temperament.
Okay.
We'll appeal to intuitions, we'll run thought experiments, and you might think for some temperaments that makes sense.
Yeah.
But some people are more neurotic than others. Some people are more, they care about, part of it's preferences too, I think, what you care about, what you don't. And yeah, I get your point to a degree. Like, if she finds me hideous, I don't want her saying like, you're Mr. Handsome. But if
she finds Donald Trump more attractive than me, or I don't know, I would want to know that, right?
Well, I'd probably want to see if her, check her vision first before I worried too much about that.
That would be a problem. Yeah, maybe not Donald Trump. Yeah, no, that's a joke. That was a joke.
Maybe Donald Trump 50 years ago.
Yeah. I don't know that was a joke.
Vance.
JD Vance, is he a good-looking guy? Is he a good?
I honestly don't know. I think he thinks he is with his trimmed beard. He does do a nice job with the beard, I've noticed.
He does. It's very clean.
Yeah, but he usually looks pissed most of the time. So I don't know if that impacts his. I'm guessing his job's very stressful. So he looks usually pretty pissed most of the time, or annoyed. Maybe is a better way to put it.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to tell.
He does. But maybe that's just what they call resting witch face or something. I often have this face when I'm thinking about something, and I'm not happy. I wouldn't say I'm happy, but I'm thinking, and I don't look happy, right? He has something like that. Yeah.
Well, like I said, he's probably has a very stressful job, and he's annoyed at various underlings for screwing things up, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, right. So, there's something about your article that kind of rubs against me a little bit.
Ooh, nice.
So maybe I can get around to pinpointing that. So Mark Twain says, "Always tell the truth. That way you don't have to remember what you said." What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and it's easier to keep your easier to avoid getting caught in a lie. So
that's true.
So yeah, it's probably better for your reputation, generally speaking. Yeah. Although depending on the audience, there's some people you may not want to tell the truth to. But generally speaking, I think it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Like if Tony Soprano asks you if you think he's a nice guy, maybe lie. Don't
maybe
go to
lie.
Mike Tyson.
That's a good point. Yeah.
and tell him about how ridiculous you find his lisp.
Yeah, you don't want to tell him that. No, no, no. Because you might die. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah,
That's
I
just,
think that's probably right. And
yeah.
I have a good memory for some things and a terrible one for others. So that's probably really good advice as far as that goes.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, okay. So let me see if I can get around this issue a little bit more. Do you think so? Your kind of assumption in the background of your paper is bullshit is everywhere. It's all around us. There's a lot of it, and humans do a lot of it. I mean, part of me wonders, like, well, I wonder how much bullshit was a concept before our culture in the last, I don't know, 100 years. I mean, it seems kind of, I mean, maybe we had bullshit before, even in Plato's time, but bullshit seems a lot more refined. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but
In some ways.
I mean, it seems to point to a low culture, a low set of values that have been conditioned, that have been shaped and influenced, particularly in our American culture since the early 2000s, motivated by Jerry Springer mentality, reality TV, WWE, Hulk Hogan, reality. That's effectively, I mean, it's not high culture, right? It's not refined. It's not, I wouldn't say there's any sense in which any of that is really virtuous. Even if I indulged my baser self on occasion watching wrestling, which I did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about this that seems off. Like, okay, if the AI is this way, and the underlying problem behind AI is really a human problem, which I think there's something right about that. I think that's probably true. But it seems that we've created this language game that is not only bullshit, but it's just it's just an illusion that we've lived in, and we continue to prop it up like we prop up so many institutions that probably should die. I don't know. Is there any sense in which we should resist this notion of bullshit that's everywhere?
Can you say a little bit more about what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, if bullshit is everywhere, as we see it on the internet, it's all over the internet because the internet is full of human opinion and full of human ways of communicating that are not intended for truth. They just don't care about truth at all. And the chat bots are picking up, these LLMs are picking up on all of that. So we've created this kind of system of deeply refined bullshit because we are bullshitters, and I would say because we're low culture, we're base. I mean, we're pretty base in our culture. I think we've gotten to a point like we love reality TV more than we love like a quality musical or a play, right? We'd rather watch reality TV with two guys fighting each other, or naked women on in the hot tub. We prefer that more than high culture, right? This kind of bullshit culture seems to be kind of feeding off of that low culture, the base desires that we have as human beings. Yeah, it
Wasn't it
seems to me
always
like I want to say we should kind of resist that. That seems problematic to me. And if these AI bots are feeding off of that, that's the data that they're getting. certainly that seems intuitively problematic to me. We should resist it in some way, maybe. I think we should resist it. It does point to like a deeper truth about humanity and the fact that not all things are techno problems. As Neil Postman says in Technopoly, not everything is a technical problem, in fact. And that's true. I think that's right. And that even bears itself out in these language learning models. But we've created this other reality that seems to be wholly problematic that we need to resist, maybe.
I think Mozart was the Taylor Swift of his day. I mean, we think of him now as high culture, but to be fair,
Yeah.
he wasn't at the time. People were very snobbish toward Mozart. But yeah, as far as resisting goes, and so there's tech problems and there's resisting. So as far as resisting goes, I think you'd have to do it on a personal level. I mean, at a certain point, you're, to use a phrase from The Sopranos, shoveling shit against the tide, meaning you're fighting an endless, never-ending, unwinnable battle.
Uh-huh.
Because ultimately, and this ties into the tech thing, ultimately a lot of technological problems are human problems. Very few, I think, technical and technological problems are actually tech problems. They are how the technology is used by bad actors.
No.
You're ultimately dealing with the human ego that's very fragile. We're actually pretty pathetic as humans. Like, well, we live short lives relative to the world. We can't very affect much. And I don't mean pathetic in a judgy, finger-pointing kind of way. I just mean...
No, that's fair.
We are very elaborate sandcastles. We are here today and gone tomorrow. We want to believe we have this deep need to mean something and have meaning.
Yeah.
And to contribute. It could be in any number of ways. We want to be important and we don't want to be forgotten. I think some people don't care, but I think most people don't want to be forgotten.
Right. Yeah.
And yet we are faced with a world in which all of those things are silly. In terms of like, we will be forgotten. We can make an impact, but we're very unlikely to make a big impact. It's not to say that our actions don't matter. They do, but they don't matter to the degree that we perhaps want. Everybody used to want to be a rock star. Now everybody wants to be an influencer. Is it for the money and fame? Part of it. But I suspect part of it might be a desire for immortality and meaning and purpose. That craving that a lot of us have. So what's a cheap way to get it? Or at least seem like you have it? Going back to that appearance-reality distinction we were talking about earlier. Lie to yourself. Bullshit. Bullshit in such a convincing way that it's hard to not believe those things. And I mean, you can fight against that in yourself, but I don't think you're going to win. And I definitely don't think you're going to win against humanity. You will just be forgotten. Like your efforts will be forgotten. I mean, a few people make a big difference. It's not impossible. But we are elaborate sandcastles wanting to be real castles. Yeah. And perhaps we will. I don't know. I suspect there's a lot more to this life than we think and realize. The older I get, the more I think we live in what I might call a metaphysical conspiracy. Like it looks like death is the end. You've got these divine hiddenness problems. Yeah. Why does God allow good things to happen or bad things to happen to good people, horrific things? Right. I think there's a lot more to this life than perception and appearance. But that's what we're facing in the immediate term, right? When you're staring down at your own... I mean, I'm facing this right now. I sort of went through a midlife crisis. I turned 42 recently. And you go, wow, probably more than half my life is over. Yeah. I've got probably more behind me than in front of me. That can mess with your head. Sure. Yeah. So I think the best place to fight it's probably in yourself, each of us in our own personal lives, trying to fight that tendency to bullshit. But I guess I'm giving us a little tiny permission slip, very tiny one. Because life is very hard and it's very short. And a lot of people live very hard lives. And I don't want to come along on my high philosophical horse and take that away from them because I have some idealistic, clear-eyed picture of what they ought to be doing. In some cases, I think bullshitting is very bad. But at the margins, now and then, I mean, yeah, should you have that next bowl of ice cream? Maybe not. Is it going to kill you? Probably not.
Well, not
Right.
immediately. Yeah.
Not immediately. Yeah, exactly. Not immediately. Exactly. It's all the bowls of ice cream over time.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah, but it's something that I think you're getting at something, which is if you didn't struggle against it, it might take over. But I worry that if you get rid of it entirely, life becomes a lot harder to manage.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think that's worthy of consideration. I do worry that it seems like this form of communication or this language game has caught on more than something being on the fringe or being on the edges of our communication. It seems to be a bit more heavy-handed in permeating our culture and maybe even permeating the technological world in which we live right now. It seems to be, I mean, when I look at the political discourse, I mean, I think either this is all lies or it's pretty much all bullshit. And I think it's kind of like the whole conservative problem, or the conservative argument against kind of progressive ideology regarding art. I mean, there's something about it, like if it's all that, like if it's all like if art is all kind of subversive or it's all kind of challenging the kind of the norms of society, then at some point it's going to feed on itself, right? It seems kind of like maybe that's more the problem we're in right now as we've entered into this culture of social media influencers that are now the experts of the day. And
Sure, there.
Well, they may not be, but more people are listening to them. So, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
That seems to me kind of problematic. The fact that we are this way, we have conditioned this way, we are this kind of people, and feeding on bullshit we seem to be doing more of it than not. So it doesn't seem to be on the edges to me. I mean,
yeah. So I was not in any way, shape, or form endorsing the status quo.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
But just pointing out that sort of the purists, I think, who want to get rid of bullshit have this problem with, you might call it the human condition. Why bother getting out of bed in the morning? It is a bear of a problem that people don't take seriously. Like philosophically, it's hard to answer that question. Especially when your life is short and your prospects of success are very low for a lot of things. But yeah, I think there's a difference between that and just 24/7 bullshit all the time. It's like bullshit. It's layers of it is really. And I think there's a dynamic we're witnessing with social media. I suspect this is part of what's going on or what you're picking up on. If you were back in the ancient Greek agora, the marketplace, you would be competing with other bullshitters, but you wouldn't be competing with bullshitters worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
Now on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all these other places, bullshit artists are pitting their skills against one another, and they're adapting. You might call it like the evolution of bullshit. Rhetorical tricks. You'll see them. You'll see, like, over the course of a few years, the types of rhetorical tricks that influencers will use will change and they'll shift. like starting things with like personal hooks. I used to have this huge problem and I solved it. Well, blah, blah, blah. And I think they copy each other. So like influencers and bullshitters will start copying from each other techniques that work better. So it's really like the evolution of bullshit techniques. Like, how do you get better at spinning the truth and spinning lies?
Mm.
How do you get better at weaving in the right kind of truths? And there's certain people that I think are exceptionally good at this.
Yeah.
And I think unfortunately, I think it's on both sides of the aisle. I don't think everybody on both sides, but you'll see these very prominent figures on both sides of the aisle who are very good at using half-truths and lies and all kinds of other things. Rhetorical tricks, facial expressions even, all kinds of techniques. And I think it's because they're now in competition. If I don't, if I'm in Athens and during the time of the ancient Greeks, I don't know what's going on in Beijing, or what would have been called Beijing at the time, or the Middle East, or North America. Those are different bullshit techniques. They haven't really been pitted against each other. So you might think of it as like I don't know, like a bullshit playoffs maybe, or
bullshit playoffs. That sounds like a great title to a book paper.
But like, and these will compete. Better bullshit techniques will win out. Influencers will adopt them because they work better. People that adopt the more effective techniques will rise to the top of the heap. They'll have bigger channels with larger followings. Because if you're going for persuasion, regardless of truth or lies, if you come off as credible, and especially if you're entertaining and credible,
yes,
which isn't always the same thing as true.
That's right.
You could get a lot more people, and it's not the only factor for sure. There's artistic and how you have to be a good actor, I think, too, and good at presentations, but learning how to package how you label things, how you talk about them, what you talk about first. These are all bullshit techniques, and they've evolved with selection pressure because you're competing in the attention economy for eyeballs and followers and subscribers. And I think, I don't think everybody does this. I think there's lots of people, you can do niche stuff and there's lots of people, for example, that I watch on YouTube that I think are actually try very hard to be very reliable. But your average schmuck flipping through TikTok, they're going to want the hooks, the catchy stuff, the stuff that's hot, the stuff that's cool, the stuff that's sexy. And bullshitters are going to get better and better at packaging that. And now they have extra tools to help them.
Yes.
AI, right? And they can run. I mean, they even do this on YouTube. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you can upload like 3 or 4 different thumbnails, and YouTube will run the video with different thumbnails and pick the one that works the best, that gets the most clicks. And you can imagine thumbnails.
Really?
Can be
Where
bullshit.
is this? What is this?
On YouTube.
I want to look at this.
Oh yeah, exactly. Whereas, maybe a different thumbnail didn't work. So you can upload multiple thumbnails, and then by an evolutionary process, they get selected. The more that one gets selected, the more YouTube will favor that one. And then over time, that's the thumbnail that just gets used. But that analogy holds to influencers, politicians, so-called thought leaders. Not all of them, but definitely a lot of them. And they, the better scam artists sort of rise to the top.
Yeah.
It's like reverse cream. You get the worst. And then other people start copying those techniques because they work. So I suspect that's what you're picking up on. It's the rate of bullshit evolution has picked up quite a bit over the last 15 years or so because of the internet. We're all connected now. So now you have to compete on a single stage in a sense. Whereas before, you just had to be the best bullshitter in your town, or the best bullshitter in your church, or the best bullshitter in your country club. Now, you have to be among the best on Substack or YouTube. Or
bullshit has compounded. It's just built on bullshit, further bullshit. I mean, it just... was this always the case? I mean, it just seems like everything's reducible to the whole problem Plato had with the sophists. So sophistry is winning out. Yeah, right.
It's
Yeah.
it is an ever-present problem.
um, hmm. So okay, so let's come after this. I'm still not. I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied. I like your answers. I'm not saying that. I'm not quite satisfied with this where the dialectic is going, and maybe that's a problem for me.
Yeah, you could
So
bullshit
okay,
yourself about whether you like the outcome.
yeah. So your account, reputation, signaling, self-deception. You might say they sound a lot like classical theological accounts of pride and sin. Do you see any overlap here?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely pride, right? I think pride's
Yeah.
probably the. I know there's lots of debates about what the cardinal virtues are. Like, what is the primary virtue?
Yeah.
I've always thought it was humility. That humility comes before everything else. It's how you acquire, because it's by humility that you acquire other virtues.
Yeah.
And I think the opposite of that, the cardinal vice, is pride. For obvious reasons, we are very prideful. I mean, we're a very prideful species. God almost sets it up that way. I mean, if you think about it, we're social. Popular people tend to do better. They tend to get more help, more attaboys. They're liked more. In a lot of ways, being a human is a popularity contest. It's not a far leap from there to pride.
Right.
Humility. So I think, given the type of creatures that we are, yeah, I think we bullshit. I mean, what else? We bullshit to manipulate others. I mean, it's control too. But my suspicion is that ultimately it boils down to self-esteem. Yeah. Your standing in the world, your standing in life. Getting people to love you.
Yeah. Yeah. We like to.
I mean, arguably that's Trump's one of his key motivations. He likes being liked, and who can blame him, right? People like to be liked. You don't like to be disliked. Like every time you leave your house, people throw rotten vegetables at you and call you a jerk. I mean, that's maybe not the best. Maybe not the best life.
Yeah.
But I'm also not the theologian here, Josh. So there's that.
No, that's fair enough. I'm not expecting a theological answer. Humility is interesting. I mean, Aristotle and Thomas would put four other virtues at the front, right? As cardinal: justice, temperance, truth, and what's the other one? I always forget the other one. You probably know the other one. What's the other one? Four cardinal.
I was going to guess courage.
Courage is relative to fortitude. I'm sorry, I said truth, but prudence. Prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. Humility at one level is the alternative, the contrary, you might say, the contrary, if we're using Aristotle's categories, the contrary to pride. Yeah, I don't want to think too deeply about that. Okay. No, that's interesting. Do you think, do you agree with Frankfurt that bullshit really is the greater enemy of truth than lying? And if that's the case, what does that mean for our culture that we've kind of touched on already? I mean, I have this itching problem with this. Like our culture, our society is very base, very low. Like we're feeding on it. And it seems to me the image that I keep getting as we're talking is like we're constantly feeding bullshit to ourselves. And like this can't be a good thing, right? This can't be a good thing. It shouldn't last. Like we're just feeding it to ourselves. Like, is that Is that a problem? Is it a problem that we're shaped more by sophistry or bullshit if they're the same thing? I'm not sure if they're the same thing. Is that a problem that we're shaped more by persuasion than truth?
I think it depends. I think in certain contexts, yes, definitely. There's plenty of ways in which, or areas in our lives in which truth is definitely more important. For example, it's hard to solve a problem unless you're honest about it, forthright. So when it comes to things like, becoming a better person, truth is definitely paramount. But I think there's areas in our lives in which I don't see any way forward but bullshit. If you think, well, bullshit, you're being sort of, if you think, well, plausibility is the only thing we've got, then I'm not sure how you're going to avoid bullshit. Because there's a sense in which I guess you could be sensitive to the truth by means of being sensitive to the plausibility. But I just think in most areas of our life that really matter, like spiritual matters or moral stuff, religiosity, relationship with God, there's lots of ways in which I'm not sure we have access to the truth. We are what am I looking for here? Kind of like Charles Taylor used to think of us as being sort of transcendentally condemned to just barely touch. Like we barely have access to the transcendental realm. I think these higher realms. We're sort of aware they exist. We grope at them with our philosophy and our dialectic. We try and make sense out of them. But we're not angels and we're not gods. We're not the sorts of creatures that sort of reside in those realms and just have direct access to them, or ready access. So in that regard, I'm not, like, for example, I'll give you an example of what I mean.
Yeah.
I think philosophy is mostly bullshit, but I don't think that's a bad thing because I don't know what else philosophers do but chase plausibility. I mean, I've said something like this earlier in the conversation, but
yeah.
And I'm not saying an individual philosopher can't find the truth. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like, as a group or as an enterprise, we chase plausibility as a proxy for truth. Yeah. The problem is that it's not a perfect proxy. You're going to get plausible arguments that are false and implausible arguments that are true. But I mean, this is something that Richard Rorty liked to remark on. Like, if you got a true philosophical theory, how would you know it? You can bet on it, you can believe it, you can have justification for it, and you may even have the truth. But would you know that you had the truth? I'm not so sure. Maybe in some cases, but not others.
Yeah. This seems deeply pragmatic. Yeah.
Well, I mean, looking at like Phil papers or various databases that do surveys of philosophers on various positions, like moral realism and God's existence and the mind-body problem, and philosophers, there's a peer problem there. These are really smart philosophers. Many of them are very acutely aware of the arguments for the other side. And yet, despite knowing those arguments, despite interacting with people who strongly disagree with them but are just as intelligent and educated, they nevertheless disagree. So I'm left with thinking, okay, as a group, what are we left with but plausibility? So I think in some cases, if you're using bullshit to get power over people, or you have access to the truth, but you'd prefer to lie in cases where it looks better, that is very much disrespect for the truth. I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah.
But I think what Frankfurt missed, ironically, is that there's also a kind of, like, you might call it benign or neutral bullshit, where it's not that you're truth insensitive by aim. You're not intending to be truth insensitive, but the practice is largely truth insensitive because we are these transcendentally impaired beings with very short lives.
Yes.
who try to grope our way to the truth using plausibility. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't really know what the alternative would even be. You might occasionally get lucky and get a divine revelation or something. Like I can imagine that happening on occasion. But that doesn't seem to be where most philosophers operate. We're not, like, God may throw us a bone now and then, like a truth bone. But that is not normal. That is not the norm.
Yeah.
Every argument I've ever given, every paper I've written, no matter how plausible I think the argument is, always in the back of my head I think, yeah, but what if I'm wrong?
Right.
What if I'm wrong?
Yes.
There's always it's a nagging impulse that pushes me forward to continue thinking and arguing and debating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's, and I mean,
you're a philosopher deep down. That's
apparently, yeah. Apparently,
you're. It's, good thing you're in that vocation. Yeah. 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 I don't want to go down a trail that might be unhelpful. I mean, this is interesting. You're bringing up, I mean, maybe it's just interesting to me. It might not be interesting to anybody listening, but plausibility, you've brought that up a lot. Like, that's the only thing we've got. I think I feel the pull of that. I think so. But then so my nerdy side is going to hear Richard Swinburne in the background and say, no, we don't have just plausibility. We have probability, right? Yeah, we have probabilities. And we live off probabilities. Or maybe we have something else. We have, I tend towards some kind of rationalism. I think there's certain philosophical axioms that are necessarily true. They must be true. Otherwise, the intelligibility of our discourse wouldn't make any sense. Or, I mean, even apart from that, nothing would just make sense. Nothing in our life would make sense without these basic philosophical axioms that we have. Being itself is something that seems close behind when I reflect deeply upon my own self-consciousness. You may disagree with that totally, and that would take us down a longer discussion track, of a different discussion.
But just to clarify really quick, I think sometimes you definitely do have high probabilities, and there are some things that philosophically you can definitely know. So I wouldn't say all philosophical claims are about plausibility. So we definitely sometimes have probability, and sometimes they're just there's things we definitely know, like Descartes' cogito ergo sum. Like, I think therefore I am. That's a pretty plausible. I'd say that's very high probability, if not true. So so don't misunderstand the view. I think definitely sometimes in philosophy we definitely arrive at truths, the necessary truths, and things that have to be true. And we can also arrive at things that are very highly likely to be true, high probability. But I think I would consider that to be plausibility, broadly construed. And by plausibility, I just mean the best shot we have of the truth. So I give you three options, A, B, and C. You pick A because you think it's most plausible, meaning you think A is most likely to be true.
Yeah.
Based on the considerations in its favor.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so yeah, just to clarify that's not I think Swinburne's right, and I definitely think there's things we can know. I just think a lot of the time what we're doing is we're groping around for plausibilities. So that's a very big part of what it is to be a philosopher.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Yeah. I'm sympathetic to that. Yeah, I think that's right. So would it be fair to say that AI is just a mirror revealing who we are?
Yeah. I mean, if what large language model, I mean, there's different AIs, like AlphaFold works differently, but large language model AIs, definitely, because they're predicting what they think They're predicting a context in which you're in, and they're predicting what you're going to say next in that context, based on what everybody else has said in that context that they have access to. That is definitely, it's an aggregate mirror. So what is being reflected to you is sort of like, it's not reflecting you, it's reflecting the humans as a group that it's had access to. So it's sort of, so you're really talking to the internet in a sense. Probably why these things are bullshit, because you're talking to the internet. But yeah, you really are talking to sort of like the mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? And the internet responds, not you.
Good.
No, I'm kidding. Oh, it says you, of course. But you're talking, the mirror on the wall that you're talking to is the internet.
Yes, that's a good analogy. Good. Yeah. Sleeping Beauty, taking us back. Yeah. This is the new mirror on the wall.
With a few guardrails attached.
Yeah, right. I'll bring it around to an end. I've enjoyed this.
Me too. It's been fun.
When I think about truth, theology, and I think about this issue of AI and bullshit, I do have this sympathy, like this, I feel the strong pull of everything, almost everything you're saying, regarding bullshit having a usefulness to it, a utility. Regarding the kind of pull to plausibility. Most of what we're doing in life is we're groping for plausibility. And that groping for plausibility itself is in many ways embedded in a larger kind of social phenomena and a language game that the internet itself has exacerbated. And it's created a kind of meta language game that we're now in and that we're playing with again. And so I feel a pull of that. And so I'm going to go a different direction. Probably, you may not even ask these kinds of questions. I ask these kinds of questions because, well, I'm a priest and I think about theology, and this is kind of where I'm at, right? So when I think about this, I think about I've long had the thought that our social phenomena, and the internet especially that we're living in, this kind of language game, the social phenomena, or the social reality that we live in, it's hard to, well, I guess using the Matrix analogy, it's hard really to unplug from it. It may be impossible. We're embedded in it so much that the beliefs even that we have to some extent, using kind of McIntyre's thought, I'm very sympathetic to the fact that our beliefs are richly situated in our social practices. I'm very sympathetic to that idea, right? And this is why, as a theologian or as a priest who believes in God, and I believe that ultimate explanation is found in God. If I'm just going to put my cards on the table, which you know this already, I believe that some sort of ultimate meanings kind of system is found therein. Part of me is looking and saying, well, the kind of rationalist approach of trying to get at the purity of truth, right? That's kind of sensibility, maybe even the kind of Richard Swinburne impulse is unlikely. But this is where I'm well, maybe we need an otherworldly liturgy, an otherworldly kind of set of social practices to reground us in our own real humanity, our true humanity. This is my sense, right? It's been my sense for a long time, and having this kind of discussion kind of presses into some of those questions, some of those underlying beliefs, in some cases, some of those underlying anxieties that I even may have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this sounds like the spiritual equivalent of touching grass.
Yeah.
Or what I like to do when I'm crazy and in my head, and I'm worried about status games and reputations and all this nonsense that we get ourselves invested in, especially if I'm home, if I'm at my house, I go outside and I look at the Superstition Mountains.
Yeah.
There is something grounding about that. It's been around for millions of years. It will be around for millions of years longer after I'm dead and gone.
Yeah.
To remind myself that there are so many greater things in this world than our silly little disputes that we get into in our status games and all the other nonsense.
Yes.
It has its place. Those things are valuable, but the Superstition Mountains doesn't bullshit and doesn't play language games. It just is.
Yes.
Much like God, much like the universe. They just are. And it's nice to get that reminder.
Yeah. That's good. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the discussion, Jimmy.
It was fun.
Professor Licon. I like
I had a
like
great
the
bull
last one.
session. I like the bull session we just had.
That was good.
Yeah, it was good.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
What I find is so compelling about this conversation is that it flips the script. We tend to think of AI as a threat. I mean, this is certainly common in many of the circles, discussions I've had. There's a lot of pessimism surrounding it. There's also optimism, of course. As that kind of thing, that kind of practice or that kind of phenomena that destabilizes truth. But what we've seen is that systems in many ways are actually reflections of us, you might argue. They're kind of reflections. If they're producing bullshit in the kind of Frankfurtian sense, it may be because we've built systems of our own patterns of speech, our own incentives, our own struggles with the truth itself. And so that raises a kind of deeper question. At least I have this kind of question, not just about technology, but about ourselves, more fundamentally, what it means to be kind of human, what it really means to be human. And I hope that question still matters. Are we actually people who want the truth? Or are we people who sound like we have it already? If we don't get that question right, no amount of technological progress is going to solve the problem.